was trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and it was just awful.
I've turned chicken salad into chicken shit. I will continue to do so.
Here I was, blaming AEW for feeding you chicken shit, knowing you mindless millennials would be eating it up as if it were chicken salad, when it's really been your fault all along.
Make chicken salad out of chicken shit. People is as people does, that's all there is to it. But a square peg in a round hole just never seems to fit. And you
This is Bianca Belair.
Hey, this is Kevin Owens.
Hey, it's Seth freaking Rollins.
It is the man, Becky Lynch.
Rhea Ripley here, and you're listening to Wrestle Radio Australia.
But the one thing this man here said that I agree with is I get the right to choose my last opponent at ReAwakening. And I choose you, Jimmy boy. But you see, EPW have already told me this isn't going to happen. They said they're too scared that we're going to shed blood in this ring. But you know what? I don't need their permission. I don't need their rules. I don't even need their referees. I will bring my own. And I will bust you open and expose you for the fake-ass wannabe FN Carnage you really are.
Welcome everyone to the longest running Australian wrestling podcast. This is Wrestle Radio Australia. This is ReAwakening week, and the voice you just heard on that quite intense promo is the man, Tyler Effin Jacobs. He's won basically every championship you could possibly win in EPW. In fact, they've gotten rid of a couple of them after he won them because no one else could follow it afterwards. Tyler, mate, how are you, my friend?
I am good. Thanks for having me, mate. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, this is, you wouldn't know this, but this is our second time having a crack at this. So we're getting around to it, and we've worked it out. So now we're good.
Technology, right?
It's so good. It's so good. Look, mate, you've been. It's weird because like I'd known you'd been around. Like you're like a staple in EPW. I didn't realize, honestly, that you were like one of the original like founding members of like it was ECW, I think it was when it first like
explosive postal wrestling. Yes.
Yep. I gotta think like when you're in the locker room, do you ever go, look guys, I've been around when this place was just called Awakening? All right.
Oh look, we do joke about Awakening, and it's one of the things we try to forget about. But it is a running gag where people want to sit down and watch it, and I try and say, "Nah, please don't. It's not the greatest."
Because was that your debut? Was that the first show?
Yeah.
So you wrestled like 3 times in your debut.
Yep. Yes, and I was the first wrestler through the curtain as well. So
wow.
The show opens, the Lukey comes out, does his spiel, and I'm the first guy you see out of there. So. Crazy.
That's a hell of a a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a thing. And that was as FN Carnage, of course.
Correct.
Back in the day.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So how
up with?
Yeah, oh mate, I reckon I kind of got lucky because when I was coming up and I was getting ready to sort of like debut, I sort of pitched the name I wanted to use to Matt Basso and Chris Basso, and they're just like, no, trust me, no. So and like
unfortunately we didn't have that back then. It was being one of the elder guys when we started as well. Myself and Dave, like there was pretty much it was already thrust upon us that you guys are at the top because you're the oldest.
Yeah. Were you one of the ones along with Dave that would go over to Coles and train for a bit?
Yes. So I went over to Adelaide for the 6 weeks with Dave and a few other guys. Correct. Yeah, sorry for those of you at home that didn't know, EPW school basically like happened and was founded on the fact that guys like Tyler and Davis Storm would take themselves over to Adelaide and then train for how many weeks? It was a 6-week training thing where it was literally every day. So every day was something to do with training. It was weights, it was cardio, it was at the wrestling facility twice a day, doing boxing and stuff like that. So it was a real rude awakening into that sort of culture.
Yeah, and that was with like Australian wrestling legend like Cole Devani. I'm originally from Adelaide, so it's hard to be in Adelaide and being wrestling and not know about Cole because basically that's where everything in Adelaide wrestling came from was like Cole Devani.
Yeah, absolutely,
So-
and that's EPW as well. Like, you know, without him, I don't think we would have kept going.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, because I talked with Trent O'Day and then those boys up at QWA,
Yep.
and I was trying to explain to them what they're doing is basically exactly what you guys did back in the day. Like, you would fly, like you flew yourself or drove yourself to Adelaide, whereas they came from like North Queensland, Townsville, to Perth to do the super camps, and then come back and like teach those people what they learnt on the camps. Like, you're basically doing what Tyler and Davis and all those guys did to found EPW. You're starting the right way. You're doing the right things.
Correct. I mean, and it's great because, like, when you see those guys come up and you're watching, and I try and watch as much as I can around the Australian scene, you see what they're doing and the improvement they're doing. And when guys go across and all the interaction with them, you can see they're growing, and they're growing the right way.
Yeah, that's exactly. I know that Davis went over there not too long ago and was really impressed with what he'd seen over there, which is a credit to all the guys up at QWA. I hate being nice to Trent, but I'll do it anyway. But over like the 23 years, mate, can you believe that you've come from where like Awakening is, or Awakening was, to like the Willetton Stadium? You're probably going to get like 1,000, probably more than 1,000 in that stadium. Can you kind of believe that this is what you guys have worked for 23 years has now come to this?
Oh, look, I think if you would have said that 23 years ago, hey, you're going to wrestle in front of 1,000 people at a big end of year show, like our WrestleMania, what we try and call our WrestleMania, I would have said, oh, no way, you know. And we've had highs and lows and stuff like that, but yeah, thinking about it now, like, to me, it's easy to believe with the people that are there, the people that are running the show, the people that put the effort in and stuff like that. Like, it's not what it was when we were 23 years ago, when we just had us and a bunch of kids basically trying to put a show together in a kickboxing ring, you know, in front of a couple of hundred people and not knowing what to do. So yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible feat to do. But for me, I don't think it's something where I'm like, oh, I can't believe we're doing this, because I can. I trust the system. I trust the people there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you put the work in. That's the difference. You see a lot of like newer promotions come in, and they sort of like day one, they have one really good show, and they're like, well, that's it. We're established now. We're amazing. We're going to go and do everything. Like, it doesn't work like that. You have to put in the hard yard. You have to do, like, I remember, this is a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, I say like 4 or 5 years ago, talking to someone up here where he was just like, oh, my goal next year is for us to get like 450 people to show in. That's a really good goal. But that doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen in a year, mate. It just doesn't. I mean, if it did, amazing. And it's a great goal to have. But if you just adjust your goals just that little bit lower per year, you're eventually going to get to where you're going.
Yep.
But you've got to put the work in. You've got to put the groundwork in. And that's what I think is really amazing about EPW, is that you can see the progression year to year of the groundwork you guys have all put in over that time to get the company where it is today.
It's a hard thing, because you obviously, when you start up wrestling, and other companies will want big success because they see it and stuff like that. And sometimes they may get lucky and they do get that big crowd, or they get the interest, which is fantastic. It's not bad to want that. But you've got to be ready to ride that roller coaster, because we've hit those marks where we've been really good. And you know, I'm talking, 15 years ago and stuff, where we thought we were the bee's knees, and then it just plummeted down and then back up again. Like, you've got to go through that roller coaster. You've got to expect that's going to happen, and you've got to be ready for it.
Yeah, because I don't think people realize how cyclical wrestling can be. Like, and it's always usually as strong as what WWE is. That's as strong as the indie scene is. It's always going. At least in Australia, I think it's always going to be that way, because when WWE is not a hot product, people just aren't looking for wrestling. They're just not.
When something else comes along, I mean, I think the biggest one I noticed was when UFC got really big. That's when I noticed the plummet for us, because all of a sudden these young kids that were growing up and were getting older, And all of a sudden, with teenagers, the UFC had hit the stage, and they were like, "That's incredible! I like watching that. That's something different." And we lost a lot of that. But again, like wrestling, like you said, WWE goes through it where it becomes cool again, and all of a sudden, people come back and want to watch wrestling and see the local scene and see all that sort of stuff. So, like I said, you've got to get ready for that ride, that roller coaster ride, because some days you're right up there, and some days it's just I'm wrestling in front of 150 people when I wrestled in front of 700 before. What's going on?
Yeah, I always make that joke off. When we did the World Series Wrestling Tour, we did like the show in Brisbane, and there was I think it was 800 or so people in the building. Yeah. So we did the show that night, and then the next Monday, I'm sitting there in my high vis with a beanie and a hoodie on, loading a truck, and I think I took a photo and send it to the boys, and I'm just going, "What is my life? Really? What?" Why can't it just be like that all the time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we get it all the time. Every time there's a big show on, and everyone talks about the Monday after a show. Like you go back to reality. You go back to your work.
Post-wrestling depression.
Yes, exactly right. I was a superstar on the weekend, and all of a sudden, I'm sweeping the floors over here on Monday morning. It's a tough one to swallow.
But I used to make that joke to my mates back home in Adelaide. They're just like, why? Because they're like, why don't you just go and play footy? Why don't you go and do that? I said, well, do you sell T-shirts with your face on them at footy?
Yeah.
Do you take photos with kids? Do you sign autographs? You don't. On the local footy level, you don't anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Really, local wrestling is the only place where you sort of do that. You're sort of like a mini celebrity in that bubble.
Oh, yeah, absolutely feel like a star, don't you? And you get that rush, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. But again, it's Monday hits, and then you're like, the reality, that's right, I'm just me.
Yeah. Which, can also be a good thing.
Oh, yeah,
you just get
absolutely.
to slide back into normal life.
Yeah.
How was the environment over there because I know we've got up here in Brisbane coming up in February, we've got the Grand Slam, AEW Grand Slam. What was the atmosphere like for you guys in Perth for Elimination Chamber?
It's a tough one. It was, I think the week of, it was just that rush of, holy cow, WWE is coming, everything's happening. Obviously, we had our big show the day before, but there was definitely a buzz. But again, I think once the show was over, but it just sort of died. It was just okay, we're back to being Perth. That's who we are. It was fantastic to see. You look at the show and you see the stadium and you're like, holy crap, that's home, and that's amazing. And everyone there was just so pumped and amped. But yeah, I think that was then back to reality, and you're like, I think in wrestling you sort of get used to it because that's just every time you go out and wrestle. But yeah, the vibe over here was definitely for that week leading up. It was huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, and the Super Show yourself, the Super Show you guys put on, that was massive as well.
Yeah, phenomenal show. And you all the best talent around Australia coming here to wrestle. And we talk about Super Shows. I remember back, I think I did Super Show 2 and 3 way back when in Sydney, where I had a 5-minute spot in a Rumble and then another 5-minute spot in a match the year after, and that's super. We thought the Super Show, all the best wrestlers in Australia, and we had to go to Sydney, and that happened here in Perth. We were able to put on a Super Show with the absolute cream of the crop.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, because Davis is pretty much in Australian wrestling is a household name.
Yep.
Mainly because he sort of ventured out to other places and sort of like that. I'm kind of wondering why is there a reason why you never did it, or you did it at the start and then sort of tape it off?
I did it at the start, so I travelled a bit. I did the Adelaide, Sydney's, I've done Melbourne. I did Adelaide a fair bit, so I used to go back and forth there, but that was very early on. I think once I got to a certain point in my life, and I was like, look, wrestling's fantastic, but I'm not going to make a career out of it. I know where I'm at, and I was quite happy with that. I had a family, I had a boy and stuff like that, and was a dad, so traveling place to place probably wasn't top of my list for me. What I did enjoy doing at that time was training guys and getting guys to that level and getting guys to the next level and stuff like that. And I think for me, I put a lot of focus on that training side of it and training these guys up to be absolute superstars, because I knew they could be. I knew guys like Shane and Mikey and all those sort of guys are going to be absolute superstars. You know, the Bobby Marshalls and stuff like that, Marcus Pitt, absolute superstars. So I can put all that time and energy into it without having to leave home, without having to leave the family. And then, I just put more effort into that, I reckon, than actually trying to make it big.
So how does that feel for you to see those guys that you sort of seen on day one, like Shane and Mikey, doing the stuff they do now in New Japan, and then when they were signed to NXT and all of that? How's that feeling for you?
It's great. I love it. Like, it's a hard one because some people wrestle for themselves, some people wrestle for other reasons. And like I said, I've always sort of, from a training side of things, wanted guys to develop and be that. So it's rewarding for me to see that the effort that I put in and help these guys. I'm not saying that I got them there, because I think they would have got there and by themselves as well. But I definitely feel like I had a hand in helping them get to that point. And if you know the backstories of me, that trying to toughen them up a certain way, and drilling them really hard. It's a proud moment for me, and I love it. I love seeing guys just go places, and I always try and put that on my students now when I'm taking trainings. I'm like, I see something in someone, and I'm like, I really think you should do this. I really think we should push for the stars, and it's rewarding for me.
Yeah, you remind me a lot of Chris Basso, because Chris was like that, and because I started trying to be a wrestler, and then I started training at 35, so I was way too old to start training, really, and
Never
realized that my body was telling me otherwise, but so it was just like I ended up doing commentary, and I became a manager, and that's where I found what my passion was, as being a manager. I love doing that, and I ended up managing Chris. And we were talking one day, and I just said to him, because like I'm sure you know Chris, he's one of the most talented wrestlers. Yep. Like, you see, I was sitting there, and I think we're having a beer after a show, and I just said, like, why did you never try to like go overseas, man? Because you're good enough. Why don't you guys, like, I just want to make this place better. I don't really want to, like, I love my life. Why would I want to leave that? Like, it's cool and all, but that's not what I want to do. I want to bring up the next generation. I want to make this place as strong as I possibly can. And I see that, like, a lot in you. And it's like, he sort of instilled that in me, because I'm like, I'm in my 40s. There's no way. Like, WWE, AEW, all of those guys aren't looking for managers anyway. So why don't I just try and make this place as good as I possibly can? Yep. And I kind of see the same thing as you as I do in Cree. That sort of energy.
It's a weird thing, because, like I said, everyone does wrestling for some reason or another, whether it be for themselves or for whatever it is. But everyone has their own reason, and I love pushing that out of people and going, like, you don't have to be an absolute superstar. This could be your weekend thing. And you would know, a wrestling community, when you've got a community like we do here in Perth, and we have a great community here in Perth. It's just nice to be in. It's nice to be around some people, and wrestling attracts the strangest people. These, what we call weirdos, actually fit in, because we're all weirdos. You know, what we do, what we wrestle, we play fight, we do all that sort of stuff with each other. And it's a weird thing to anyone else, but to us, it's the norm. And we attract those sort of people. So I love that community. I love when people can just come and be their own person and have their own goals, and not have to go, I don't want to be a superstar. I just want to come here, wrestle my mates on the weekend, train with people, get to know people, and just be social.
Yeah, and that's like, I remember, because I moved from Adelaide up to Brisbane because my wife got a transfer for work. So I was sort of like, okay, I kind of have to move.
Yeah.
But she's like, oh, what do you miss about Adelaide? It's like, look, I hate to say this, I don't overly miss my family that much. Like, I love them. I don't miss, I miss my wrestling family. Yeah. They were the people that I spent the majority, like, when I wasn't at home with my wife, of course, the majority of my time was spent either at the training center or having dinner with Cree, where we were, like, booking out the company sort of thing, or working in some way, shape, or form to help everybody. And that's really what I miss the most of all. And, like, I think I'd spent the last like 4 or 5 years up here trying to build something that's closely as resembles like Riot City
Yep.
as possible, because that to me is what, like, it made me want to do anything I could to help the place. If I can have someone else feel that way for up here, then that just makes everything like stronger.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
and like you can see that same thing in EPW. You can see that same thing that you guys have all fostered, like coming up. It's not and it really does, like it really is a lead from the front type thing, because you don't just get that. Like, you have to have people like at that top level that are as dedicated as people like yourself and Davis and like Slats and all of those guys, to show them that this is what we do.
I think we had from the get-go, I think someone, I mean, you mentioned Dave all the time, Stormy, he, like, from the get-go, he was that guy, you know what I mean? And we all sort of just, I mean, I've known Dave longer than I've done wrestling. So me and Dave went to school together and stuff like that. So we came up together. And that's how I got into wrestling. But, like, attaching yourself to someone like him, who is just a genuine nice person, genuinely loves wrestling, like, and lives it and breathes it, you get attracted to that, and then the next person does, and the next person does, and it just, Dave set the standard for everyone else. So everyone else that's now in that top position stems from someone like Dave, you know, like they see how much passion he has for it, and they get motivated by it. So they want to be the same person, and they are motivated to do it. The next person will watch that. You know, you mentioned Slats. Like, Slats is probably the most dedicated person I know in all of Australian wrestling. Like, that, he lives and breathes it. So we're lucky to have people like that on board, and I think that just helps across the board in EPW.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, when I was coming up in wrestling, you know, we tend to be fairly cynical in wrestling, and like, you hear stories about people, and you're just like, yeah, I bet she's really an asshole. And it's like you'd hear like how nice a person Dave is, and like, yeah, okay, whatever, mate. I bet she's rude. Like, behind the scenes, he's probably a real asshole. And then you meet him, and about half an hour or an hour or so after meeting him, this is the nicest dude.
Yeah, right.
And if you have a problem, for some reason, you just go, Dave will know what to do. I'll message him and ask him.
Yep.
And invariably, he will message you back.
Yep, 100%. And then, like I said, we're lucky to have guys like that here. And, you know, it's not just those two guys. It's everyone across the board, you know, and especially in that leadership group, the young guys coming up, the guys that are trying to make a name for themselves now in the main event. So, like, it's just what EPW is.
And you mentioned, like, the young guys coming up sort of thing, and I don't know if we've mentioned this before. We probably sort of, like, if we did, we might have glossed over it. Like, this weekend is your last match.
Yes.
So, and you alluded to it in the promo, and I know it's kind of a half work shoot thing, I think, where you've decided you want your last match to be with James. And I'm just wondering what the reason is behind that. Is there a reason why you picked James for your last match? Because you rarely could have said, look, I really want to work Stormy in my last match. Like, he's been my longest friend in the business. I just would love to do that. And you've picked James. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, nothing against Stormy, obviously. Like I said, we're good friends. I've wrestled Dave so many times across the board. And every time we do wrestle, like, we're lucky to have that chemistry where we can go, right, let's just swing for the fences. Like, there's no holding back. That you try and bring out the best in each other, and we don't take anything to heart. If something goes wrong or something's just that little bit too hard, like, we go for it, and I love that. But with James, I've seen something in him that reminds me of myself when I was young. He's very much like I was when I was. He's this young, big, brash kid who has that passion for wrestling and also has that fire in his belly, and I love that, and I connected with that. And you know, I'm such a hardcore wrestling mark. Like, I love that sort of stuff. You know, he is as well, and he's got his stuff that he does really, really well. And I just thought, you know what, this is someone who I could really go out there and just go balls to the wall, don't hold back, and it'll be something special. And, you know, through wrestling, you grow these connections and stuff like that. And I've grown one with him really, really well over the last few years. And I thought it was just fitting that he would be the guy that I would go out on.
Yeah, because you mentioned that you really enjoy that hardcore wrestling style. But you like, I'm a fan of you because of your believability. Like, I'm not a massive fan of the flippy. I'm not a massive fan of that. I'm a more of a, like, my favorite wrestler is Arn Anderson.
Yep. Yes.
Like,
love him. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I watch your matches at EPW, I'm like, this is the type of dude I like.
Yep.
Is there and really, like, did you sort of like sway yourself that way because of the way everyone else is going? You're like, maybe if I'm a little different, then that's a added attraction to the show, sort of thing, or?
I think everyone. I mean, again, that's what we try and teach in wrestling: is be different, stand out in the crowd. You mentioned Arn Anderson. That is who I, mimicked a lot of my stuff off of when I started early out in wrestling. And I still do a few bits and pieces that he still does to these days that I throw in there because I just love it, and it is very different to what they do. James is very similar to me, I think, in his style of wrestling, and again, that's why we probably match so well. But yeah, from the get-go, I just wanted to be, you had Dave, who was this technical genius who knows wrestling inside and out. We had all these different characters. I naturally felt good, and it's probably not the best thing from my past, but I was a bully, and I can admit it, and I was a big bully, and part of that was my training and all that sort of stuff. Coming up with you would know Cole and how hard Cole Devani was. He's an old school wrestler, and I took a lot of that from him, tried to bring it into myself, and then I generally felt more comfortable being that bully, which then sort of progressed me into that style of wrestling.
And you sort of like your character has sort of evolved now over the years, and I get this feeling with a lot of people that over the years, as you go on, your character just ends up becoming just more of yourself towards the end. Like because you had the whole cult thing for a while, and I kind of get the feeling that's not you, but I get the feeling that this version of like Tyler Jacobs is closest to who you are now.
Yeah, look, I think so. Look, and then the Father Jacobs, the cult gimmick that I did, before I was doing that, someone mentioned to me, and they pulled me aside and said, you're becoming, what you're doing is the same as what you were doing, 10 years ago, and it's a bit stale, it's a bit boring, and it wasn't in a bad way. It was in a very good, productive way. And again, that's what EPD is really good at. Like EPW will pull you aside and say, look, we want you to be better. We still want to use you. This is what we see. Come up with something else. And through that, we went through a few different things, and I resonated with something with the cult. I'm someone who's not a big fan of religion, and I don't like being preached to, and that's just who I am. But I went, well, look, if I don't like being preached to, what happens if I preach to the crowd? How much are they going to hate it? And then I thought, oh, that's actually something really good. So I can take all those things that I hate and then throw it into the crowd and throw it onto that crowd that watches the show, and I think I'll get a reaction. And it did. It got a really good reaction. I had the children and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, coming back to the old me, I think, that's definitely me and who I am and where I am right now in my life, and I can relate to that a lot. So again, it's one of those things that if it feels natural to you sometimes, I think it's a lot easier than trying to manifest this creation that isn't you, and you're trying to prove to these people that's who you are when deep down you're not. Whereas I think this one is a lot more me right now. Yeah.
See, I know that like Stormy's been sort of like hinting at it over the last couple of years, like, oh, I don't know how much longer I have, I don't know. Like, when was the point for you that you decided, I think at the end of the year I'm just going to wrap this up?
It was literally, so last year I didn't wrestle that much. I wasn't getting booked that much, and look, I was like, it is what it is. I'm, last year I was 44, I'm 45 this year, and I'm like, I'm getting on in life. And I thought, look, it's probably about time. The Sundays after it was taking long to recover. I was not feeling the way I used to. So I was like, it's probably getting to that point, and I would rather go out on my terms and do something I want to do. And again, I went to EPW and said, look, this is definitely my last year. This is what I'd like. If you can't do it, I completely understand. Here's a bunch of ideas. What do you think? They came back to me and said, yep, cool, we're happy with this. Let's roll with this. We really appreciate it. And then went from there. So for me, I knew it was coming. And I always say, like, last year probably should have been my last year. But because I didn't wrestle as much and I wasn't doing as much, I was like, no, I want to go out and I want to have fun. And I've had an absolute blast this year doing what I've been doing and wrestling all the places I've been wrestling. But yeah, I think for me, I just knew it was time.
Yeah, and you've you've also done like Dude, Where's My Ring and stuff like that, sort of like expanding your experience sort of thing. But arguably, this has probably been one of your better years, like in ring wise. Do you think it's because there's no real pressure anymore? Because you're like, I'm done at the end of this year. I'm just going to have. Yep,
pretty much. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to do the things that I wanted to do. I'm going to try the things I wanted to try. And everyone that I've wrestled has just been, yep, cool, let's roll with it. There's never been a difficult moment or anything like that. Everyone's just went, yep, cool, that sounds good. I'm happy to do that. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I've just had fun with it. And it's weird because last year when I wasn't getting booked, I'm like, it's not as fun as it used to be, but I get it. I'm getting old and stuff. Whereas I've just had so much fun this year. It's like, oh, okay, wrestling's fun again. Like, I enjoy it. It's ending, and I'm happy with that, and I'm always going to be happy with that. But I'm like, this has been a great year for me personally.
Yeah. So is it one of the things where you're just going to walk away now, or are you still going to be involved in like the school and helping out?
I'll still be at the school, so I do Monday trainings and take Monday trainings for the fundamentals, which again, like that's who I am. I love training people and I love watching people grow. So I'll always be involved in some form. But as far as being on any shows, like, dude, I'm done. EPW shows, I'm done. Like, I'm just like, everything is over in that capacity, but I still will be around because everyone keeps asking me, oh, it'll be sad to see you go. And I'm like, I'm still going to be here. Like, you're still going to see me. I'm still going to rock up to shows and watch the shows and give my feedback and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just as far as performing in ring, it's done.
Yeah, I got told, like, because I've been thinking about doing it, like wrapping it up, like managing over the last like year or so. I've just been thinking about it because like I'm a little bit older than you. I'm like 48, so I'm like,
you're a spring chicken.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm not gonna. And my wife literally said, look, you can't because you would drive me crazy at home. Because like I need to have something to do. I need to, and because I don't have the training like part that you have.
Yeah.
So my real thing is just like the creative side and the interviews and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's my version of training, if you will.
Yeah.
So and she's like, if you just if you retired completely, I think we would last 6 months and I'd kick you out because I couldn't deal with you being like climbing the walls. So basically told me I wasn't allowed to retire until it's right. Sort of thing. I mean,
retirement's a dirty word in wrestling. I know I've retired once already in wrestling. So, but for me, it definitely is done. But yeah, I always, and I was talking about it today to a couple of friends, is like, it's hard to stop what you're doing, which for me has been 23 years, and that's been who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And now I've got to find something to take over that and find out who I am and what I want to do afterwards. I think being able to train people is going to be really good because I'll still be involved. But getting that rush of being on a show and the adrenaline and all that stuff, I've got to find something, and I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, what can I do that can replace this? I just like, as a wrestling tragic as I am, I just don't know what I could do to replace it. Like, there's nothing
like it, is it? It's one of those things where you try to explain it to people, and if they're not involved or if they don't like wrestling, they just don't get it. They're like, oh, well, just do kickboxing or join a gym, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not the same. Like, it's a completely different rush that you get when you do it, and a different feeling that you get, and not everyone's going to understand that. So trying to mimic that is going to be near on impossible.
That's what I see. That's what I don't get with, like, and I know it sounds stupid, but when I see young guys who have really, like, that I think have got a lot of potential, just decide that they don't want to do it and walk away, I'm like, I don't understand this. Like,
Yeah.
explain this
Wrestling's
to me. I can't.
Wrestling's not for everyone. Like
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's something I can't get my head around. Like, what do you mean you don't like this? How can you not like this? How can you take or leave this? I don't understand this.
I think if a lot of people have a certain image in their head of what they expect to be doing in, 5 years of wrestling. I'm going to be the champ. I'm going to be the best. And, sometimes it takes our guys 5 years to get on a show. Like, we've got such a deep roster, such a lot of trainees at the moment that are trying to get onto these shows. It takes a while to get onto them. And for them, some people want that instant glory. And we talked about it really early on with feds that want to get that instant glory straight away, but it takes time. You've really got to nut it out. I was lucky enough to be at the start where I was there straight away and I was in. But right now, it's so hard to break in, and we set such a high standard here in Perth that, we're not just going to give anyone that spot. You've really got to earn it. You've got to do your yards. You've got to do your bumping. You've got to go through the whole training. You've got to show something different. And then you might just get on the show. And then you've got to keep your spot after that. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
So, like, 23 years, mate, you're leaving the wrestling part of the wrestling business. Who do you see now that you, or maybe just starting or really coming up, that you can see in like 23 years doing the same thing you sort of are doing now? We're like, okay, I've had 23 years here. I've put in the hard yards. I've built up EPW as much as I can. I'm like, who do you see in the current crop that you think has that sort of same?
Well, like we talked about James Hartness, obviously. Like, I think he's someone that's going to be around a long time. Like, he's got that fire. He's got that passion for wrestling. So I think he's going to be around for a long time. Guys like Taylor King, who, has worked his way from the bottom all the way to the top and worked really hard and gone through a lot of tough times, injuring his knee and then coming back from that. And he's someone that is so super passionate about wrestling as well. I can see him there for a long time. Guys that, not a lot of people might not know yet. Elijah Henry. Like, I'm a big Elijah Henry fan. Like,
I've seen a bit of him on the showcase shows.
Yeah, he intrigues me. Yeah, he's someone to watch out for. And again, I had him there on Monday night doing training with me and watching him teach people as well. And getting that side of things, he's got a passion for it as well. And when you speak to guys like that and you hear it in their voice and how they talk about wrestling, how they respect wrestling and what it is, I think he's someone that will be around for a long time as well.
Yeah. So, mate, I can't wait to see what you guys do this weekend, because like I've liked the other matches you the two of you have had together, because you just don't. It seems like you don't give a shit. You just go out there and like, which is rare nowadays, because you can tell when people are like pulling back on some stuff, and you can tell the guys that before they go out going, don't hold back. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
And like, I see that in you guys, so I can't wait to see it. This weekend, if you're in Perth, get to Wilton Stadium. I think gold tickets are sold out. I think silver tickets are close to being sold out if they're not sold out.
We're selling lots and lots and lots, so get in quick.
Yeah. You're going to be, there'll be over 1,000 people there. EPWPerth.com for tickets. Mate, as an Australian wrestling fan, as someone who's been in the business, like doing podcasts and all of that sort of thing, covering Australian wrestling for the last 11 years, mate, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for the company, everything you've done for EPW, everything you've done by exchange of doing for EPW, you've done for Australian wrestling. And mate, I'm not the only one. I had somebody that's messaged me and just wanted to say a few words. So I just want to play this and we'll get back to you. So hang on a second.
We're just a few days out from ReAwakening, which will be the final resting place of Tyler Jacobs, FN Carnage. But I think, unfortunately, over the years, Tyler Jacobs hasn't gotten the credit that he deserves for being such an instrumental and integral part in EPW becoming who it is. There have been other notable figures who emerged at the same time, Jimmy Payne, Mikey Nichols, Davis Storm, and I think at times the shadow that we've cast has sometimes not allowed Tyler Jacobs to get the credit that he fully deserves. One of my absolute best friends in my life since high school. I love you, my man. Best of luck on Saturday. And I hope that the Australian wrestling community, and indeed the West Australian wrestling community, gives you an outpouring of love this weekend, and that your legacy and your place in amongst the greats and the most instrumental figures in Perth wrestling becoming what it is today come your way over the next few weeks, my friend.
So for those of you at home that are listening on the podcast, that was David Storm talking to Tyler there. So
I told you, such a nice guy, right?
Yeah. And to add to that, I know that it'll probably get aired before this because the way podcasting works, people.
Yeah.
Hayden Seneth talked to Lachlan this week, and he also said that yourself and David Storm saved his life as well. So for stuff like that, mate, for sacrificing yourself for 23 years in the ring, on behalf of everyone in Australian wrestling, mate, thank you so very much.
No, thank you, mate. I appreciate that.
So that is going to wrap us up for Reawakening, probably for Reawakening week, because I reckon I'll probably air this on the Friday leading into, because I can't think of a better way to close out Reawakening week than having someone who's been around since the first one talking to us. So once again, if you're in Perth, get your ass to the Wilton Stadium. It's the biggest show of the EPW year. It's their WrestleMania, as Tyler said earlier in the show. There are so many good matches on this card. There's personally, because I have a relationship with the guy, I can't wait to see the Penn match with Solomon, and I can't wait to see that just because of how inventive Solomon is. Like, I've known that from day one, sort of thing.
And being in there with Damian Slater, who is genuinely one of the best wrestlers in Australia.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be so good. The 4-May elimination main event, amazing, but being able to see off one of the greats of not just Western Australian wrestling, but Australian wrestling, Tyler Jacobs, mate. Once again, thank you so much for coming on, and that will do it for this episode of Wrestle Radio Australia. Until next time. And I'm just pulling up my theme real quickly. I am Todd Eastman. Tyler, thank you so very much for coming on, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and it was just awful.
I've turned chicken salad into chicken shit. I will continue to do so.
Here I was, blaming AEW for feeding you chicken shit, knowing you mindless millennials would be eating it up as if it were chicken salad, when it's really been your fault all along.
Make chicken salad out of chicken shit. People is